Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Driven Shot in all its glory. I am Omar Hawwash. He is Jamie Coles, and we are back together
We are
doing
indeed.
this
We're indeed
after last
together,
time.
together but apart. But yeah,
Together but apart, yes. I'm at my residence. He is at,
I'm at the Ciutat Esportiva Joan Gamper. You can see it here behind me. We've just heard
yeah,
from Hansi Flick in the press conference as Barca get set to face Osasuna.
yeah. And that one is an exciting encounter. And I think that really should be the topic that we discuss heavily. But I just want to clarify the reason why I wasn't there last week was due to paternal matters I had to tend to. In other words, I am officially a dad. So
Congratulations
that's
to you.
thank you, thank you. So
Another
that's
another Barca
part
fan
of
to
the
the
adjustment.
family.
Hell yeah! So that's another adjustment. It's been a very interesting addition to everything in my life, you know. So really excited about that. But feels good to be back here too. So
Excellent,
uh,
excellent. And Barca ushering it in with a win against Getafe as well.
yeah, yeah.
Not the goleada, not the big scoring result that
No,
we're kind of gotten used to a little bit this season.
I will
Um,
say against Getafe though, like I think any Barca fan or Barca follower would take a 1-0 any day of the week because Getafe for years have been that team that we always see Barca struggle against every single time, you know. And I was covering the game on our on Blaugranagram Twitter or X as it's mysteriously called now. And one of the things that I wrote was that Getafe are playing MMA because they really are. That's what it feels like. I mean, the amount of fouls in that game that were registered as actual fouls, I think it was in the double digits for Getafe. I think it was 12 or 14. They only got one yellow. That's not even counting the ones that were just play on. It's nothing. And then the one yellow that Barca got were just for it wasn't even for a foul. It was for dissent.
yeah, and to the captain as well.
Yeah. It's like, what's the point? What's the point of having the officiating staff if they're not going to actually protect the players from stuff like that? Because some of the fouls were terrible. I mean, some of the tackles Getafe
It
did
was a
that
very
game.
aggressive match.
I was
It was very
genuinely
aggressive.
worried for some of the players.
I mean, Lamine, I think particularly took the brunt of it, and we've seen that in the past. Like
Lewandowski too.
Lewandowski too, but we've seen it in the past. Like Gavi's been on the sore end of some pretty tough tackles in the time, and
Absolutely.
I do think these kind of like youngsters do take a lot of the kind of the yeah
The sting
the
of the game.
tougher end of it. Yeah, absolutely, and that's not fair either.
No,
I think there's responsibility on the older players to take a little bit more care of the youngest, but hey, it's
I'd
football.
say so.
They don't go out there for a cuddle. It's
No, no, no. That is true. It is a contact sport at the end of the day. But I do think that for clubs like Getafe, I mean, they are sort of reminiscent of. To me, the way I see them is like the second coming of Atleti in 2013. That's how they are in my head, because
okay.
Atleti in 2013 were just such an aggressive team. The difference is they did to some extent play football. Getafe didn't really do that against Barcelona. I felt like they had some attacks, they had some, hints of good play, but for the most part, it was just aggressive tackling as much as they could. And it really disrupts the flow of the game, which I guess is Getafe's strength, is just disrupting the flow of their opponents. That's what they do.
And
And
I
I
think
mean, it's working well for them, but I just think at some point you have to sort of draw the line between what's legal on a pitch and what isn't. And that's the officiator's
it's down to the
decision and
referees.
their
That's down to the
responsibility.
referees. And I mean, that's something that I remember like last season, there was a lot of talk about like when Barca played these teams, and you mentioned it well, like the way they disrupt the play. When Barca played these teams, they really suffered with that under Xavi.
Yeah.
And if they weren't able to kind of play their game and get that kind of that flow and that movement, they would really struggle. I think
Mhm.
what we saw on Tuesday was against Getafe is that Hansi Flick was able to rally the team, his kind of different approach of football, and also keep it very clean. Like the Hansi Flick, 7 for 7, very very fair play, very clean play, very football first.
Absolutely.
And he even after the match, like he was like, "Oh yeah, the referees, they're doing a good job. They've officiated 7 matches for us, and we won all 7." It's like, okay, interesting.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, which I think is really a difference maker now. The mentality of this team. I mean, we said it at the start, Jamie, you and I, when we spoke about Hansi Flick's appointment, but also just in general, his appointment is so much to what Barcelona does and what they don't do, how they are as a club and how they behave on the pitch. So much of that is defined by the manager and by his staff, and I think we saw with Xavi things last season and the season before that were very good. We saw some things that needed improvement. I don't think Hansi Flick has come in and absolutely miraculously changed the team, but what I do think is
Absolutely not.
his ideas. He comes in with sort of a fresh mindset to what Barca have been used to for so many years, and it's so it's so amazing to watch a team play the way they're doing right now because they look so confident the whole time. You don't feel like, as we felt under Xavi, under Ernesto Valverde, under Quique Setien, you got the feeling that Barca weren't gonna. You watch the game and you go, oh, okay, yeah, this is a tough one. They're struggling for 75 minutes. They're not going to win this. Under Flick, you don't get that feeling as much because
No.
it feels like they always have aces up their sleeves. They always have different ways of doing it. They always have different strategies to try, different runs to make. For me, a thing as subtle as the switch that Lamine and Rafinha did, where Lamine went to the left, I was in my head. It took a few seconds because I looked at number 19 and I was like, "That did
What's he doing
Ansu get a
there?
new number? Yeah, did Ansu get a new number?" Then I realized because Ansu was warming up like 5 minutes before that, and then I realized, oh, it's not Ansu, it's Lamine. And then Rafinha, not even 2 minutes later, almost scores a goal.
Yeah.
But the ability to have that sort of interchangement between how they play, I think, is going to be so huge for the longevity of this team, just for the duration of this season, even because you need that.
Well, it's something that Flick really cares about as well. It's something, he talked about Eric last week, for example. He spoke about Eric being like the ideal centre back, or that's his favorite position. He's like, but right now we need him as a pivot. We need him at this kind of central midfield role, or like as an anchor role, if you like. And
Right.
His kind of, and we've seen it with Rafinha. Rafinha's coming to play the number 10 kind of position with Dani Olmo being out, but we've also seen him being allowed to play on the wing, like you say with Lamine. And I think like Hansi Flick's doing that. I think longevity of the team is a good way of explaining it because there's so much football. We're playing so much football. Like we're on like this is gonna be like 3 matches in 7 days for like the second week in a row.
Yeah.
They played Tuesday. They're playing tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, as we're recording this. They're back on Tuesday again for Champions League. They played the previous Sunday. Like it's a packed calendar. It's such a packed calendar. And Hansi Flick's clearly worried about injuries. We saw this morning in training. You can watch the training in its entirety on Mundo Deportivo's YouTube channel. He's rested Rafinha. He's rested Mad Castador because he knows that they're carrying this massive physical load. We saw it last week. He rested Pedri. He took Lewandowski off on Tuesday against Getafe to bring Pedri on. He's seen these key players. He's got these important. I think he does have what we call starting players. Xavi always said, no, I've got 25 players and any of them could start. I think Hansi Flick has his sort of more preferred starting 11s, variations of. But he's conscious. He knows they need to rest them. He's counting the minutes that these players are playing on the pitch, but also in training. And I do get this sense of like they're really looking after the physical aspect of the players, whereas maybe previously under Xavi, like he was very concerned about like the emotional and mental aspect of the game and the pressure that the players receive at a club like Barca. Whereas I think we're taking Hansi Flick's got a different approach to it.
I agree,
and I think it's for the best. Like you said, the season is long. We're only at the end of September, and we've already played so much football. International break. We saw, Lamine Yamal played so many minutes. He needs resting, but we've seen injuries come about because of these international breaks.
Yeah,
important players are currently in the hospital beds because literally in some cases because of just the massive physical load they're under. And we're at the start of the season still, really. One match day 8.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like when you really think about how much Barca have played lately, the training sessions I imagine have been quite intense. And you add to that the fact that Barca now the expectations within the team is we want to compete for every single trophy out there. So it's not we're not going to just go for La Liga and say if we don't get grouped, I guess now you can't get grouped anymore, but if we make it into the knockouts then we're good. No. Hansi Flick wants to go for everything, as does the rest of the team. Rafinha said it himself the other day. And for that, you need to plan for the longevity of your squad for the season. You need to plan for them to be able to last. And I think stuff like taking Lewandowski off for Pedri, stuff like resting Lamine Yamal, which I really hope that Flick will start doing a bit more.
I mean, this would be
It's
the match to do
important.
it, maybe. Osasuna would
Yeah.
maybe be a good opportunity, especially if we've seen Rafinha rested today in training. Maybe,
Yeah.
we've got Ansu kind of ready to come on the bench. He needs some minutes now. I think he's done.
He really does.
He's looking well in training. Is Ansu?
Yeah.
So I think maybe now would be a good opportunity to rest Lamine Yamal. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we could see like another instance of like Pedri in, was it 2020, 2021, where he played
Yeah.
every minute of everything.
Every
and it
single
just
game,
and it
every
just
tournament, he was
broke
there.
him. And
Yeah.
we just I think until recently we've still been seeing the consequences of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's
You
back.
took the
He's
words
looking
right out of my
strong.
mouth. Absolutely.
He's looking strong. He's looking good now. And I hope he stays that way.
Hopefully.
But yeah,
But
I think
yeah, it is the thing that I mean, to be honest, I definitely do trust Hansi Flick's management on this. I think he definitely has that in mind. I think there is a reason why he's not resting Lamine. Unknown to me what that reason is, but I'm sure there is one. I mean, of course, Lamine's influence is unmatched, but at the same time, you need to be able to rest him at some point because otherwise we'll just have another case of Messi dependencia on like a player or two, and that's not a good thing. It's never a good thing.
it's not what we need either.
No, no. So that's a thing where I think, like for me, a player like Ferran Torres, he has been not so good, I think is the mild way to put it, lately with Barca. With Spain, for some reason, he's balling out. The some reason is the tactics and the way the team plays and the role he has. Those are two very different things on Spain's national team and with Barca. And until he finds a way to make those match, it's not going to work out. But if he doesn't get the minutes, he's not going to work out either. And if you do want to rest a player like Lamine, Rafinha is going to need some rest eventually.
Yeah.
Pau Victor is there for the taking if you want to rest Lewandowski for a game, maybe against an Osasuna, maybe against your Granadas, your A-bars, what have you. In those games, you don't need to play Leva for 90 minutes. You could play Pau Victor for 75 and then put a false nine Ansu Fati in or something.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I think we will see those kinds of rotations. I really do. And I hope that we'll see the start of that here against Osasuna because it's important. It really is.
But I mean, also at the back, like Jules Koundé, for example, he's playing so well. Like for me, he's one of the
he's
like,
a
and
quarterback.
He's
a quarterback.
And he set up that goal for Lewandowski on Tuesday against Getafe.
Oh my gosh, that was. He's genuinely an incredible Rolls Royce of a footballer in every single way. So good, so composed. Just his vision is incredible. His calmness, the sort of I know it's a gimmick sort of to speak about players' aura at this point because it's such a normalized thing to do. But he genuinely has that. He really has that. He commands that on the pitch with the way he moves. His just everything about him as a player, I think, is fantastic. And it's not a surprise. I mean, because I was following him when he was at Sevilla, and he was one of the standout performers. I still remember the one time where he literally ran through the entire Barcelona midfield. Like, he's a great player, and now we're really seeing that. He's absolutely killing it as a right back. He's the best. I want to say this. He's the best right back in the world right now, and he's not even a natural right back. And I stand by that. I don't think you can name me one right back that's better than him right now. More consistent.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And Hansi Flick in the press conference did mention his professionalism because one of the journalists said, hey, Jules, you talk about these players that are training a lot and been playing a lot. Jules Koundé is one of them, and he was like, okay, you go tell him to rest because we've tried and he won't. Like he's giving it his all, and it's paying off. Like I say, he set up the winning goal for Lewandowski on Tuesday night against Getafe. Like he's key to a lot of this success we're seeing, and we're maybe not talking about him as much as we should, because we're talking about like Lamine Yamal and we're talking about the youngsters, and but yeah, like
I will say this. Gerard Martin, I have not been impressed with. I think now we're talking about rotations. I think it makes sense to kind of touch on some of the other players, some of the French players. He hasn't really impressed me much. I mean, he sort of reminds me of like Martin Montoya back in his days, where he wasn't really doing too much. He was kind of there. You'd see a good action here or there. I know he's a better player than that, but he just hasn't adapted as much, which is for me why I would have personally preferred maybe that Alex Valle stayed and then Martin got loaned out. Because Valle had already sort of adapted to the first team dynamics, I think. And now we're seeing the consequences of Martin not having done that as much because he didn't get as much time on the pitch, maybe not as much time with the first teamers. But I think that's something that we're going to see become a problem if it's not addressed in due time, because he's clearly going to be rotated in quite a lot. As we've seen already, and now that we're nearing match day 8, he's played in a decent amount of the games, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, with these youngsters, you've got to give them time. You've got to give them time to adapt.
Exactly. I just think now is maybe a bit too early for him compared to some of the other players that
we've not really seen like Hector Fort played as much as I thought as we would.
I agree with that.
He's good. He's good at both wings at the back.
I thought he'd be around.
Maybe he's not impressed Hansi Flick as much as he impressed Xavi. I don't know, but I thought I'd see more of him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
One of the other things we do need to talk about is the goalkeeper situation. Obviously, Ter Stegen went off against Villarreal. Nobody wants to see it. It was very tough. He's going to be out for like a good 8 months by the looks of it.
Yeah, probably.
Realistically, we're probably not going to see him until next season. If we see him toward the end of the season, great. But
I doubt it. I think after an injury like that, even if he is ready at the end of the season, I don't think he'll be played. Just to rest him, make him recover.
Iñaki Peña played well on Tuesday, I thought.
He did. No, I agree with that. I had my doubts, but I think my problem with Iñaki sometimes is it does feel like he's like a second version of Ter Stegen, which worries me in some aspects because it feels like he's taken the errors that Ter Stegen makes and he hasn't taken the good parts of like Ter Stegen's style of play. So he'll make an error that's very similar to the ones that we see from Ter Stegen. And then he'll make some saves because he is a good shot stopper.
Right.
But what we need for Barca, I think, is a different profile goalkeeper. I know that historically we need them to be good on the ball. Ter Stegen has historically been very good on the ball. That's one of the things that he's always had going for him.
Right.
But maybe now just look at it. I think Chesney could be just a shot stopper if Barca do wind up landing him. I think that might be what Barca should go for. Just a straight-up shot stopper that is okay with his feet, not scared to play it out the back. Maybe not. He's not the type to ping a pass, but he can get the job done. Because I think now, I mean, look, Ter Stegen has been around for how many years? The LaLiga strikers and the midfielders, they know, they got an idea of how to beat him.
Yeah.
If you look at how he's been beat the last couple of games he's played, not necessarily this season, but just in general, it's pretty much not the same every single time, but there are shades of the same things because people have sort of figured him out, which is completely normal. It's not on him. But
he's got his brand of goalkeeping, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I struggle to believe, for want of is that they hadn't kind of considered this sooner. Like we spoke about it a few weeks ago.
Right.
Ter Stegen, like with all due respect, he's getting on. Like he's had a long career already. He probably has some good years ahead of him. The injury is a massive knock for him and for perhaps his career. Who knows? Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
But at some point, somebody I feel must have been sat in a room with like two things. What if Ter Stegen gets injured? He was injured last year as well with a lower back injury. Mm-hmm. And two, like at some point, he's going to retire. Yeah. Probably sooner than later. Like, it's difficult to know. I don't know. And with these great players that have had such an impact on a club, you don't want to think about it. Like we didn't want to think about it with Messi either. We didn't want to think about it
No.
with
But
Xavi or Iniesta.
you gotta.
There's life is linear. Like there's an order to things,
and
at some point you have to start thinking about like succession. And
absolutely.
And so now that we're in this like terrible situation where they're scrambling to try and replace. Unfortunately, there's this LaLiga, this rule so that they can sign another goalkeeper to replace him. But like, it's difficult to believe that nobody had thought about it sooner.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the same Article 77 that was invoked for the Araujo injury. I think it might be. It's a good clause regardless. Essentially, it would mean that Ter Stegen gets deregistered in place for someone who gets registered because his injury is longer than 5 months. But like you said, we spoke about this earlier as well. I fail to believe that no one in that board or anywhere around the club, even the goalkeeping coaches once thought, hey, you're 32 years old. You're not going to be around for much longer. Maybe it's time for a change. And the problem for me is there are so many good goalkeepers out there that, maybe, okay, they might not be as easy to get away from their clubs, but they could probably be enticed some way or another. Or you could get a goalkeeper who's still quite raw, but you can kind of develop for the next couple of years until Ter Stegen moves on to the beaches of Gran Canaria and retires or whatever he does with his career. You need someone who's next in line. Because now you're going to have to sign a goalkeeper who is either getting on, hasn't had much playing time, or is coming out of retirement. Regardless, he doesn't
wherever they're
have
coming from, unless they're either coming from La Masia or they've been with Barca for a few years, they're not going to be in the dynamic. They're not going to know the training style. They're not going to know the coaching staff. They're not going to know the communication style. They're not going to be able to work in the way that Hansi Flick and the team will need them to work.
Yeah.
For me, there's two things. The Ter Stegen, I don't know if you saw the sit down interview with Zubizarreta that he did.
Very briefly.
It's a long 2-part interview, and they just kind of sit and talk about like being goalkeepers. And Ter Stegen talks about how he was helped by Claudio Bravo in his time, and talks about how he helped Iñaki Peña and Artenas. And Artenas, of course, now with PSG. I feel like Artenas perhaps maybe this is
I would love to see him back.
I do wonder if this is what's thrown things a little bit, because like they were lining up on Artenas perhaps to be the successor, and then he got impatient. He was like, look, I need a change of air, as they say here in Spain. Like I need to freshen things up. And PSG made an offer, and at the club at the time, maybe that was a good offer as well. I don't know. And so suddenly the club's like, well, Iñaki Peña now is the guy. But I don't know. So Ter Stegen talks a lot about how he was helped, and in turn is helping these players, because from what I gained from that is that there's obviously the technical and physical aspects of being a goalkeeper, but there's a lot of mental aspects. There's a lot of being able to communicate with your team, communicate with your defenders. There's the mental aspect of it being just you there on your own in a lot of regards. One mistake by a goalkeeper could change an entire match. Whereas the other team, like they kind of have like backups and help. Obviously but then in the Next Generation documentary, I don't know if you're watching that on Barca One. They've been putting out a new episode each week. You're a new dad. You've probably not got time for this.
I will. I have been meaning to. But,
it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's all about these kind of youngsters and then mostly the Masia players, but there's a kind of like some Pedri and Ferran moments as well. And there's a bit from a year ago where Ter Stegen was injured and Iñaki Peña comes on and he plays the Champions League match. I can't remember who it was against now. Anyway, doesn't matter. And he played a really good match. And Ter Stegen was like, Iñaki Peña is doing really well. He's the guy. We've got a lot of hope and a lot of future with him. And I think for me, like for him to sort of sit down on camera and say that, I think that's a positive thing. And so maybe the time has come for Iñaki Peña. And Hansi Flick today was like, no, we've got full belief in Iñaki. Like he's going to be our guy. Whether they end up signing someone or not will be another issue, and that will all be seen in the next week or so, I guess.
Yeah. The thing is, though, in that situation, you kind of have to say that. You know what I mean? I'm not I'm not playing it down.
That's also true.
But you kind of have to. Like, can you imagine if you're Iñaki Peña and you hear, we're looking at other options? No. Yeah. They're like, we're looking at other options.
Not this guy.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of has to say it. I do. It's not to say that I don't think they believe in him. Yes. Of course they do. But for me, I just don't understand why it hasn't been looked into more. Because yes, Iñaki Peña has been around for a while, but also he hasn't been in the first, he hasn't been around the first team that much in practicality. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's been around for the training sessions. He's been there for a couple of matches. He's watched on for most matches, but then what? You know?
I mean, I think this is part of the problem as well. Like Neto was playing cup matches, right, when he was here?
Yes.
So he was
Claudio Bravo and Ter Stegen were doing that as well, back when Claudio Bravo was here. They were
Whereas Ter Stegen's been playing absolutely everything.
Every single game.
And so the physical load is high, no rest, and you're not giving anyone else minutes. It's almost like a recipe for disaster.
It is.
The positive is that we've seen, like, in training, we've seen sort of LaLiga having to step up. We've seen Hansi Flick also trying out. Today he tried out an under-19s, a juvenil goalkeeper, Iker Rodriguez. We saw Aaron Yako as well last week ahead of Getafe training.
It was last week, yeah.
I think, the silver lining on all of this is, whenever a key player gets injured, is that you do see kind of like give opportunity to some youngsters or to someone else and see what other talent is kind of available within, in La Casa, at home.
But the problem with that is if you keep doing that, at some point you're going to run out. I'm not saying that Barca are going to run out of La Masia talents. I don't think they are. But
it's not likely.
At some point, you're not going to strike luck the same way you did with a Lamine or with, I don't want to say Pedri, and Gavi, Fermin, players like that.
Yeah, and these players have got other commitments within Barca as well. They're playing for Barça Athletic, Barça B. They're playing for Barca under-19s. They've got other commitments within. Obviously, if the first team calls you up, and I'm sure like Hansi Flick and all the other coaches, they like sometimes maybe have a little bit of an argument, like, no, we need him tonight because we've got an important match. But the men's first team has got to be. It's got to be the ruling.
You'd imagine so, at least.
You'd hope
they'll have the final say. Speaking of stuff like that, I also just want to touch on before we move on. We're also almost out of time.
We're almost out of time.
The Women's Champions League. Yes, and the Men's Champions League. The Women's Champions League for Barcelona, they are going to face. They're in Group D, so they're still doing the group stages, and Barca will be playing against St. Pölten, Hammarby from Sweden, and Manchester City, Kira Walsh's old club. So that's going to be an interesting one. And
for Barca, it's a fairly easy group.
It is.
If you compare it to like Group C, Bayern Munich, Arsenal, and Juventus. Am I right in thinking?
I believe so, yeah.
The Juventus got in by the skin of their teeth. That's a tougher group.
No, Barca definitely.
Lyon, Wolfsburg, Roma, Galatasaray. Also quite a tough group.
Yeah. No, Barca definitely got the easier end of the stick there, which is maybe good, but it's a good way for Pedro Romeo to sort of get an easy start into the Champions League a little bit before things really get real.
And they had a very similar match to their match against Sevilla away the other week. The other weekend was very similar to the Barca Getafe one. Kind of cagey. They had a lot of chances, but not a lot of luck in front of goal. Aitana got the goal and that made the difference, but
of course,
kind of wasn't the steamrolling we were expecting, I think.
No, and I think sometimes it is healthy to kind of get back to the ground, sort of. Not to say that it's good that Barca Femení struggled, but I think it also isn't a bad thing because it sort of helps them try new tactics. Because for a while we saw Barca just winning 7-0, 8-0, 9-0, 6-1.
I think for the competition, it's good as well to see a little bit more.
Absolutely. I think it's good for the general future of women's football that you have games like that sometimes to sort of challenge the big clubs, the big teams. I think is very, very healthy. And also it really does test the character of some of the players and the technical staff as well. So I think overall it's good to have games like that, so long as it doesn't have any, injury consequences and the likes.
We've got about 90 seconds.
I think they have another game coming up soon. So that's going to be interesting as well.
Barca Athletic play later tonight. Tarazona, I think, away. I'm going to cut you off because we've got like 90 seconds left.
Yes.
Osasuna
Let's
tomorrow
start.
away. After the run of 7 matches for 7, you'd hope this will be an easy win for Barca.
24 for 24, we're hoping. Fingers crossed.
You'd imagine.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if they didn't. Even if he fielded the reserve squad, Barca still got to win this, I think. And I think they will.
Yeah, I think so. We want to see, 24 for 24, I think would be, you were looking at it before we started recording, it'd be pretty much up there with a record.
Yes, up there
season
with
record,
Ernesto
right?
Valverde. Yes. So definitely a great start for Hansi Flick.
And I believe Hansi Flick's also overcome his own previous record with Bayern, right? For like the best run of a season.
I think so. And also, he's the first German Barca coach to anything. So he's consistently breaking records.
Let's hope for another one on Saturday. We're going to have to call it time today, Omar.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to The Driven Shot. This was brought to you as a collaborative effort between Blaugranagram and Mundo Deportivo. I've been Omar Hawwash, and he's been Jamie Coles. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next time.
Ciao.
Ciao.